All right, let's jump into a really critical moment in the history of databases. We're going to talk about a specific release that honestly built the bridge from the old way of doing things to the cloud world we all live in now. And that release was Oracle 11G. So to really get this, you gotta go back in time with me. Let's set the scene. It's 2007. The very first iPhone has just hit the market. Social media is starting to become a thing. But in the big, serious world of enterprise technology, the cloud is still just this kind of fuzzy idea, you know? It's not the reality it is today.
You see, the big buzzword back then was grid computing. The idea was you could link up a whole bunch of separate computers and make them act like one giant supercomputer. Super powerful stuff. But at the same time, the data itself was getting way more complicated, and businesses were demanding that their systems stay online 100% of the time. They could never, ever go down. The pressure was seriously on.
And that led to the big question that everyone in the industry was trying to answer. It wasn't enough to just store more data anymore. You had to manage it smartly and, crucially, make sure it was always there no matter what happened. So how on earth do you build a database that can handle that kind of new reality?
Well, Oracle's answer dropped in 2007, and while the G in 11G officially stood for grid, this release was really about something more. It was about building a database that was automated, that was resilient, and that was ready for whatever was coming next. So let's break down the first major breakthrough. And believe me, for anyone who actually had to manage one of these massive systems, this was an absolute game changer. Automatic memory management. What does that mean? Well, Oracle basically taught the database how to tune itself. So instead of a human administrator, a DBA, constantly tweaking memory settings by hand, the database could just watch its own workload in real time and adjust itself on the fly to keep everything running perfectly. And this slide just nails the difference. Before 11G, being a database admin was the super stressful job of constant micromanagement. You make one wrong move, and the whole system could grind to a halt. It was a nightmare. But after 11G, a huge chunk of that stress just vanished. The system wasn't just a dumb tool anymore. It was a partner that was actively helping you get the best performance. Okay, let's move on to the next big innovation. This one tackled another massive problem. What happens when your main database fails? But it did it in a super clever way that actually boosted performance at the same time. It was called Active Data Guard. Now, the old way of doing disaster recovery was you'd have this expensive backup database just sitting there, doing nothing, literally just waiting for something to break. And Oracle's big idea was, wait a minute, why are we letting all this powerful, expensive hardware just collect dust? And this shows you exactly how it worked. Your main database is doing its thing, processing all the live transactions. Every single change gets instantly copied over to a standby system, but and this is the genius part, that standby database is active. It's online. You can use it to run reports and heavy queries, taking the load off your primary system. It was like having a seatbelt and a turbocharger all in one package. All right, the third breakthrough had to do with the changing type of data we were all dealing with. It wasn't just neat rows and columns of numbers anymore. The world was getting messier. So they introduced something called secure files. This was a total redesign of how databases stored what we call unstructured data. The old way, using something called blobs, was super slow and clunky. Secure files was built from the ground up to be fast and efficient for all the new types of files that companies were suddenly trying to manage. So what are we talking about when we say unstructured data? Well, it's all this stuff. It's the PDFs, the Word documents, the product photos on a website, the training videos, the audio files from customer service calls. All of this was becoming essential for business, and they needed a way to manage it right inside the database, with the same level of security and performance they expected for their traditional data. So when you start to put these three pieces together, the self-tuning memory, the active disaster recovery, the modern file storage, you really start to see the bigger picture of what Oracle was actually building here. And this table just sums it all up beautifully. You had automatic memory management, which got rid of the headache of manual tuning and gave you self-managing performance. You had Active Data Guard, which crushed the risk of downtime and gave you both resilience and a way to scale your workload. And then you had Secure Files, which solved the whole unstructured data problem with high-speed storage. Each one was a direct answer to a real, painful problem that people were facing. So this is the real kicker. These were all fantastic features on their own, for sure.
But their true importance, the reason we're even talking about this today, is what they enabled just a few years down the road. Check out this timeline. Oracle 11G lands right in this perfect spot between the grid era and the cloud era. Now, think for a second about what the cloud really needs to work. It needs automation, it needs resilience, it needs massive scalability, it needs self-service. Well, the features baked into 11G were the exact building blocks you'd need to make a real enterprise-grade cloud database possible. It was the crucial stepping stone. So, the most important thing to take away from all this is that Oracle 11G wasn't just another incremental update. By pushing so hard to make the database smarter, more automated, and way more resilient, it was laying the critical foundation for the enormous shift to cloud computing that was hiding just around the corner. And that right there, that's the whole story of 11G in a nutshell. It was the release that took the best ideas from the grid computing world, evolved them, and forged them into something new, an enterprise database that was truly ready for the age of the cloud.